we have students from Lawrence University, and Dr. Strand is here with them too, who's been working with the schools in Sierra Leone for quite some time. So they're here to tell you a little bit about the history, as well as where some of the problems rooted from, and so also the solutions and how you can all get involved in helping this cause. So, the world isn't that large when we look at it. Kids are the same in every country. They all need some of the same basic necessities. And so you'll see that there's not a lot of difference between you and them. It's just the situation is sort of reversed. So keep that in mind as they talk. If you have any questions, please wait until the end. And there'll be at least 10 to 15 minutes to ask questions. So just be attentive and enjoy the presentation. Dr. Scran?
Thank you, Ms. Patel. I'm so happy to be here at Dr. Phillips. And I want to start out by introducing myself. I'm Claudina Scran, Professor Scran. We are from Lawrence University, which is in Appleton, Wisconsin. And we're here with an organization called KidsGive. And KidsGive is basically an organization that gives presentations here in the U.S. at different schools, like Dr. Phillips, and then runs a scholarship program in Sierra Leone, which we'll be telling you about in a minute. Before we get started, I want to introduce the KidsGive volunteers that are here, starting with Mariah.
Hello, my name is Mariah Mateo. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I go to Lawrence University, and I'm a senior. And I went to Sierra Leone in 2009.
My name is Ria. I'm from Jamaica. I'm Lawrence alum. I graduated in 2004. And I lived in Sierra Leone for a year in 2006. So I lived and I worked there working with children and different projects.
Okay.
I'm from California and I'm a sophomore at Lawrence University. And I'm going to Sierra Leone for the first time at the end of next month. I'm really excited.
All right, do we want to just start? Yeah, let's just start with the music. We want to just try and get in the mood here, so we've got some volunteers here. Just a little bit about some of the clothing. Sierra Leone obviously knows in tropical Africa, and these are all sort of traditional clothing. We thought we'd talk a little bit about the outfits, but Ria, you wanted to ask that question about our volunteers here.
What's your name? Chris. Oh, you got it.
Okay.
So in Sierra Leone they speak Creole, and it's like a popular local language because they have so many different tribes that speak many different languages. Creole kind of came out as like a market language. So it's one language that even though I would learn my ethnic language, I also learn this language so that I can speak with other people from different ethnicities. So in Creole, to say, what's your name, you say, wetin are you name? Wetin are you name? So I want you guys to repeat it after me. So wetin are you name?
Wetin are you name?
And you say, your name na Ria. So my name is Ria would be me name na Ria.
Me name na Ria.
Okay, we'll see how we're doing now. So what are you name? Without. Okay, let's just have it. What are you name?
My name is Katie.
Katie, okay, if the two of you would step forward here, just want to notice their beautiful outfits they have on. These are very typical of what young women and older women in Sierra Leone would wear when they're out shopping, when they're maybe going to church, when they're going to social events. And what you typically see is dresses, yes, skirts and tops, but they always match rather than, the kind of the contrasting look that we have. And what now you need? Matt, okay. Step forward here, Matt, okay? This is what somebody would wear at home, okay? More loosely fitting, kind of a house coat type pinstripe outfit. All right. Want to step forward?
I'm named Mira.
Mira, okay. And Mira is kind of the solid color version of this. This, again, is very popular for women in Sierra Leone. So thank you, guys. Blake, okay. And then Chris. Chris, okay. Chris and Blake, step forward. These are typical clothing for men, really of all ages. And I just want to point this out. This is a Sierra Leone tie-dye shirt. And it's very characteristic of Sierra Leone. All the African countries have a different textile tradition. And you maybe think, oh, there's just one kind of African clothing. But it's not, depending on where you're at, they're very specific textile traditions. And this is very unique to Sierra Leone. What do you notice about Chris's, sorry, Blake and Chris. What do you notice about Chris's top? What would you say?
It has holes in it.
It has holes in it, right? So if he's hot, he's going to stay cool. But what else about it? Yes? It's yellow, okay? And I just, not to make a point of it, just look at the young gentlemen here in the room. How many of them have on yellow? Let's just zero. I see a lot of gray out there. I see a lot of black. I see a lot of brown. Black. We got one young woman over here with black. But basically, we see a lot of blue.
I love yellow.
Compared to the U.S., Africa clothing is much more colorful, particularly men. They wear gold, they wear pink, they wear purple, they wear orange. They're not afraid of color. And they're not afraid of wearing colorful things. So this is very typical of what you'd see. When you walk out in an African street, you see a whole rainbow of colors, not just a lot of black and brown. But why do you think that's the case, though? What's the problem with wearing black, brown, dark blue in an African context? It's really hot, and it absorbs the heat. And there's typically not air conditioning. Yes, Florida's sort of tropical, but you have air conditioning. You're really out in the heat. You don't want to be in a dark color. You want to be in white or something that's a bit brighter. So anyway, thank you very much, guys. Okay, so could we just dim the lights here? Okay, well, let's just shift the mood a little bit here, and we have prepared a presentation for you. I believe your class goes to 20 after, is that right? Or 16 after. 16 after, okay, 16 after. So what we're going to do is give our presentation, and then we'd be really happy to take your questions about whatever you want to talk about. But basically, we're here to talk about GiveKids, Sierra Leone, and then Dr. Phillips' relationship. So let's just talk a little bit about the GiveKids program first. I said a few things, but Mariah, do you want to talk about this?
GiveKids was started in 2006, and Professor Strand started it at our university. And basically what she wanted was for kids to be helping kids. So, we started earlier, we go to high schools and elementary schools around the U.S. and give presentations about Sierra Leone and informed giving. And then it's really you guys who make up your own projects and raise the money and funds to support school children in Sierra Leone. And Dr. Phillips, we came here in 2009. We'll talk about it again later, but Dr. Phillips is already a partner school of GiveKids.
So GiveKids has already done programs with Dr. Phillips. I know a lot of you are freshmen and just want to tell you what's happened in the program. Okay. So basically, Lawrence University is located, in Wisconsin. You probably heard of the Green Bay Packers. I think they won the Super Bowl last year, but and we work with Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, in the western part of Africa. So I just want to say one thing about Freetown. Why do you think it's called Freetown? How do you think maybe the country got its name?
But then the people, they took the slaves back
Exactly. The British ended the slave trade officially in 1807, but did slavery end in the U.S. in 1807?
No.
No. No, it continued until the Civil War, right? So essentially there's this period, this over 50-year period. During that period, there was an illegal slave trade in which basically people were kidnapped from Africa and forced to come to the U.S., to Brazil, to Cuba. And if the British intercepted any of those ships, they took the people who were inside and did not return them to their homes. They took them to Sierra Leone, to Freetown. So the people might have been from anywhere in Africa, and they were taken to Freetown. Now, some of them made their way back to their original villages, but a lot of them weren't able to do that. And then they stayed in Freetown and created the urban population of the country. So that's the origins of the country, of Sierra Leone as a country. It was a British colony. Okay, so there we are in the snow of Wisconsin, and obviously Sierra Leone's a tropical country. Now, when I do this presentation in Wisconsin and Minnesota, I talk a lot about how the tropics are different than northern climates, but the thing I would say here is it's very similar to Florida. The climate's very similar. The heat, the humidity, the kind of trees, palm trees, vegetation that you have here is what you would see in Africa, which is 8 degrees above the equator. Now, in terms of geography, Sierra Leone is about the size of South Carolina. It borders Liberia and Guinea. Has a population of about 6 million people. Now, if anybody has heard about Sierra Leone, they've often heard about this very damaging civil war that took place there between 1991 and 2001, a 10-year civil war. Now, has anybody heard of any, when you think of this, I'm sure you've heard something about it. What else is important about this war? What else have you heard about it? So the whole phenomenon of child soldiers. Anything else? Kidnapping of people to become soldiers? Yeah. Anything else? And we'll get to that. It's really a devastating impact. Yeah. What? The diamonds, right. The whole issue of the blood diamonds. So let me just talk a little bit about this. The Civil War was fought, and there were young soldiers as young as 5 years old. Now, the thing that is not often pointed out is you've got to ask yourself, how could a 5-year-old boy, function in a regular military? In the U.S. Army, you couldn't even carry the equipment. The thing that you have to understand is that was possible really because of one reason, and that's this. This is an AK-47. It's a light weapon that can be easily taken apart and used even by a child. And West Africa at this time was flooded with these weapons, so it made it possible for even very young people to be in the armed forces, in the fighting forces. Where do you think those weapons came from? Somebody who hasn't been at one of the other presidential places. That's exactly it. They came from Russia. They came from what was Czechoslovakia. They came from Poland. After the end of the Cold War, that ended in 1990, those weapons were designed to fight the United States in the Cold War. But when the war ended, they disappeared from arms vaults all over Eastern Europe, and they were sold on the international arms market, mostly in Africa. Where do you think they got the money, though, to buy the weapons? Where do you think they got the money? They sold the diamonds. So that's what the term blood diamonds comes from, or sometimes conflict diamonds. When diamonds are sold to finance conflict. Now, since the war finished, they have something called the Kimberley process. It means that diamonds are supposed to be certified that they're not coming from a conflict zone. So the problem of blood diamonds, sometimes people ask, should I not buy a diamond? I say, no, I wouldn't say that. Diamonds are certified. But unfortunately, during this period, the sale of these diamonds did finance these wars. So let's just talk about the impact. Now, part of the impact of the war was there were people killed, but more than that, a lot of people moved. And I know in your human geography class, you're talking about migration. Well, one of the causes of migration is war. It creates what's called forced migration, where people have to move not because they want to, but because they're trying to escape something. And so you have people moving within the country, about 1 million people, and the term we use for that is called internal displacement. That's when you have to move within your own country. But there were also about 500,000 people who become refugees. That is, they went to other countries. Some went to Guinea, some went to Liberia, some went to the United States. So there was a lot of population movement as a result of the war. But there was also a lot of damage to buildings. And this is some pictures that I took in Sierra Leone in 2005 and 6, showing a lot of damage to the buildings. But unfortunately, the buildings that were damaged the most were schools. And in some areas of the country, up to 95% of the schools were literally burned down. Now, why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that people maybe attack the schools? Yes?
So that the kids will not be to go to school and they can hire them into the army.
Okay, so if they weren't in school, right, they wouldn't have anything else to do. They might join the army or one of the different fighting forces. And there's about at least 5 or 6 in this conflict. What else? What else? Anybody over here in this section? Yeah. If they destroyed this. Okay, so it kind of takes the leadership and the people in society who might know what's going on. That's certainly true. Any other ideas? Well, the one thing I just want to point out, because it may not be obvious, those are all good reasons, is that in Sierra Leone it was a British colony, and the British had been the ones that set up the schools. So a lot of people didn't feel that the schools were their schools. They weren't community schools, okay? They were schools that kind of belonged to a foreign power. So when they attacked the schools, in some ways they attacked the system or the authority figures. That may be understandable, but the problem is when the war finished, all the schools were destroyed. They really needed to be rebuilt. So essentially you had a country that was pretty poor to begin with, having a lot of problems. 2004, poorest country in the world. 70% of the population living in poverty. And I know that poverty is a growing problem in the United States. But the difference is that in Sierra Leone, to be considered poor, it means living on less than $2 a day, basically. So it's a very little amount, and it's not enough to provide 3 meals a day, housing, or anything. It's a very minimal amount. And many people lived in this situation. Also, very low rates of literacy, especially for women, but for the population as a whole, 20%. Of only 20% of the population could read. The other thing I want to point out, because you mentioned the child soldiers, is that for young people who've been in the fighting forces, they miss their whole education. From like the time you join the army at 5, 10 years later you're 15. You've been in the army for 10 years, but what have you been doing for those 10 years? You've had your whole childhood fighting, and you haven't been in school. So you emerge sort of as a late teen, almost completely illiterate. And so that's another reason why these literacy rates are so low, because of the war. Now, children and young people had a lot of special problems, and Rhea is going to tell us about them.
Especially for children, only 50% of children attend primary school. So if we consider this room, all the people in Sierra Leone, then already half of you would have attended no schooling whatsoever. And then of the 50% that would attend primary school, even fewer of you would actually go on to high school. If you were 25% attend high school, and many children actually work from a young age. So right off the bat, at least 50% of you would be working at home. Oftentimes kids, especially if you're in a family with many children, as soon as you are able to handle some amount of responsibility on your own, you'll find that you have to, most of the kids have to take part in the earnings. So if they need to sell things, maybe fruits or vegetables or different things to make ends meet, basically they have the role of helping their parents to provide for themselves and for the rest of their family members Oftentimes while I was there, you'd see somebody as young as 6 years old who is in charge of a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old brother or sister. And that's very, very common. So most often you'll find a lot of kids selling in the street, and we have pictures here of them selling in markets and in the streets. And you can see that they're pretty young, and that's very, very common for what you'd see there. Other than selling, by the time they got to probably around 10 to 13 years old, many kids, if you're not in school, definitely are given over to people who can afford it, or to families as houseboys and housegirls. And what these are is that you are given into somebody else's home and you work there in exchange for room and board. And that's how a lot of kids spend their early life, either working for someone, just for their education.
So, the reason this slide is here is this. You know, I think a lot of times people in the U.S., just in general, we tend to take education for granted. Not everybody, but I mean just in general. It's something like we have to do. It's like something we expect to do. But I want you to think about education a little bit differently. I want you to think about it as a solution to some of the problems that we talked about, okay? In Sierra Leone, kids go to work at a young age, but they're really not able to get very good jobs. They really have to work and be dependent on other people, and they can be really easily exploited. But if they become more educated, they're better able to take care of themselves and also then to take care of their families and to have a family on their own. So a beautiful school, you know, like Dr. Phillips, is really a solution to a lot of different kinds of problems, and that really helps to prepare young people like yourself for a better future. So the question I want you to think about is, what does it really take to make a school like this, or a school anywhere in the world, work? So Luana's going to come up and talk to you about that.
Well, one thing about kind of helping other countries access education is that we're not kind of helping the other country by giving them things we think they should use, you know, like things that our culture would use. That's not our job, you know. They're capable. They just, due to tons of reasons or another, they can't access what we can access right now. So the beauty of KidsGive is that we make it possible to ease the transition to access learning. And part of that is providing a lot of needs that learning requires, such as teachers. Or just look around at all the things that make it possible for us to learn in this room. You can shout out ideas if you want. This room, for instance.
It's big.
It is. It's big. You're not sharing a chair with someone. It's easier for you to concentrate if, you know, it's not loud. What other things make it comfortable for you to learn in this room?
We have a projector.
What?
We have a projector.
Exactly. Which leads into technology in general. So many, such as the lights that we don't have on right now, but you're able to see and still be inside an enclosed structure that protects you from sun or rain or whatnot. How about what other things? What do you use when you practice writing or reading? Pencils, exactly. Or paper, or, yeah, a desk, exactly. It would be much harder for you to concentrate on learning if you were sitting on the dirt. So these are things that really make it possible for these kids to learn numbers, to be able to go to the market and trade things without, you know, losing their money, or being able to play games and learn about the world through books, you know. These are the things that make it possible. Also, the big thing is you can't learn anything if you don't have food. You know, it's such a basic need that opens so many doors. So have you guys eaten breakfast today?
Yeah.
Okay, how about lunch?
Pancakes.
Have you eaten today?
Yes.
Today? I am positive that if you hadn't eaten anything, you guys would be crazy and trying to get out of the room and not taking advantage of all these teachers that are in this room. So that's one thing that is vital for them to learn.
Great, thank you. So that just gives you some of the ideas about some of the needs that students and young people have, no matter where they are, whether they're in Florida, whether they're in Africa. Now what I want to do now is talk about the relationship between KidsGive and Dr. Phillips and the schools that we work in Sierra Leone, especially Company School. So in 2009, we came and gave a presentation here, and Mariah's here. She's right there in the middle of the picture. So she's going to tell us a little bit about what's happened so far with Dr. Phillips and KidsGive.
So I think I mentioned earlier, but Dr. Phillips has been a partner school with KidsGive since 2009, and you guys have sponsored an entire grade of students at Comforty School in Freetown. So the students will be graduating this year in June. Here's from the presentation. We did a presentation in the auditorium when we came last time, so we were able to have a lot of fashion show people and fun stuff. Okay, so then after we came here in 2009, we went on a trip to Sierra Leone. This is when I went, and Mr. Barrows also went with us. And there he is with the principal of Comforty School, which is where the class is that Dr. Phillips sponsors. We had 8 Lawrence students, and it was a really great trip. Here we're walking some of the students home from school. We like to go and talk to the students and their parents to see how KidsGive is affecting their households, their lives in general, what do they like about the program, what difference is it making, and just to get real results. Also, one of the students in our group, Will Meadows, he conducted a nutrition survey on this trip and found that there was a really big lack of protein in a lot of the students' diets. So a lot of the students are basically just eating rice or cassava, yuca. And what's the problem with that? Even if you have enough rice to make you full, what's the problem there? Yuca, it's like kind of like a potato. Yeah, sister. It's a root vegetable. Right, you wouldn't have enough protein, so you don't have a lot of diversity in your diet. And protein is really important for a lot of reasons. Helps you stay healthy, it helps you grow. A lot of the children are undergrown. They're very small for their age, and their brains haven't developed at the same rate as they should be for children their age. So this is something that we're finding out, and hopefully we can have some solutions to this. This is at one of the households, student and Professor Scran, and we have some translators so that we can do interviews. And we also hold a scholarship day, which this is very important because this is exactly how the funds raised here get to the children and their families there. So we literally hand them the money, and we have kind of a ceremonial day. And the parents come to the school, they get all dressed up. It's a very exciting day for everybody.
And if I'll just jump in here, what we do is this is one of the boys, Christian Williams is one of the scholarship students, and this is his mother, that's Dominic, our translator. So what we do is we meet with the parents, we talk to them about how their child is doing in school, and one thing we're very careful about is that the money that's donated from Dr. Phillips or from any other schools, it goes directly to the parents, and then the parents are able to pay for the school fees for the child right then. They get a receipt so that we know the funds are essentially going for the purpose that we intended, but also that will meet the educational needs of the kids. And then we come back through our periodic visits to see how the kids are doing, because that's really what's important. Is the child in school? Are they doing well? That's what we're really concerned about. So this is after one of those meetings. And then last year, or this was in 2009,